Hi everybody, Jim Sammons here. Today I want to talk about probably the most exciting fish there is to catch off a kayak, and that's marlin. I've been lucky enough to have my hand on the bill of 48 marlin off of a kayak. I'm going to go over some tips that I think would help you if you want to target billfish. First off, this is a big fish. It's powerful. It's scary, it's dangerous, it's not to be taken lightly. This is not a kayak fishing 101. You know, this is a fish that is for guys who have some experience, who are ready to take it really up several notches. I highly recommend, if you are going to target billfish, or if you want to target billfish, that you go with somebody who actually has some experience doing it, because the hooking and fighting the fish is the easy part. It's at the end game when you're having to deal with this fish that having somebody on the water who has dealt with them before really is advantageous. And in my opinion, if you want to safely catch and release these fish, it's much more of a two-man game than doing it solo. It can be quite difficult to land a billfish, particularly when you start talking these, you know, striped marlin and blue marlin that are, you know, 100, 150, 200 plus pounds. Having a buddy there with you to help you out and there to help if there is an emergency situation is really important. So by all means, understand the fish, be out there with somebody who understands how these fish act. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the gear that's necessary if you want to target these fish, and some of the techniques involved in dealing with the fish in the end game. First off, in a kayak, really the only way to do it is live bait fishing. Now we've hooked them on ballyhoo as well, but for me, every single marlin I've ever caught was on a live bait. Now that might be a live mackerel, it might be a live mullet, it might be a live bonita, and it could be a bait this big, it could be a bait this big. You know, you control some really big baits. These fish can obviously eat a very big bait. So you need to be prepared for that. So if you have that live bait, you want to make sure that you have the matching hook size. You don't want a giant hook in a small bait. The fish just won't eat it, and it's certainly not going to live or look natural. If you've got the really big baits, like bonita, it's a good idea to be prepared to bridle the bait. And bridling basically means that you're putting the hook external of the fish's body, and you're doing that by running a line through its eye, and then the hook basically sits on top of its head. If you want to see how to do that, we've got a video on that. We'll put that down in the comments below. So you're going to have hooks anywhere from a 4/0 to a 10/0. The thing about being in a kayak though is you don't want to go with, if you're going with these big hooks, stay away from the really heavy wire, because in all honesty, you just cannot pull hard enough to straighten out those hooks in a kayak anyway, and it's just harder to get good hook penetration on that big heavy wire. So I like the Mustad, like the Demon Perfect Circle hooks in their 2X strong. It's strong enough for as hard as I can pull in my kayak, but I'm going to get good hook penetration, and that thing's going to stick in there. They're very sticky hooks, if we like to say. They'll really, you know, get into the flesh really easily. So make sure you have the wide variety of hooks. You don't need, what I say is you don't, for billfish, you don't need big gear in a kayak, because the kayak itself is drag. You know, the kayak gets pulled by these fish. So you don't need a tremendous amount of line capacity on your reel. What you need is a good quality reel. So it can be a small reel, but it needs to be a good quality reel that's got very smooth drags. This is going to be a long fight. I mean, I think the shortest fight we ever had on a billfish was an hour. The longest one we ever had was over 5 hours. So you need a reel that can hang with that kind of torture. Good smooth drags, preferably a lever drag reel, because again, you might be trolling that big bait, and a lever drag reel is going to give you the ability to slide your reel slightly up into gear to hold your bait into place. So we are generally fishing with our reels out of gear, clicker on, So when a fish hits it, it can run with it. It's going to feel very natural to them. If you're catching billfish off a kayak, you don't need big gear, but you need good quality gear. You know, something like the Truth LG, the LGN, even the SG are strong enough to land a billfish off the kayak. I really prefer a lever drag reel. You have a bigger drag surface, it dissipates heat better. But also, when you're trolling these big baits, you need the ability to hold that bait in place, but still let it go when a fish hits it. So you're trolling with your reel out of gear, clicker on. So you can see line just comes off here and the clicker goes. But with that bigger bait, I need to be able to bump that reel slightly into gear. So it's going to hold that bait in place, but when the fish hits it, it can run. You want to give them time to eat it. Okay, so when I hear that zip, and a lot of times what will happen is that billfish will come up on your bait and it'll hit your bait with its bill. So you might get this zzz, and you might be tempted to just grab the reel and throw it in gear and start winding. What I like to do then is I grab my reel, take it all the way out of gear, turn off the clicker with my thumb on there, and just start feeding the line out. Really let that fish run with it. Give him a chance to swallow it, because if he just swatted it, sometimes what happens is the line actually will get wrapped around the bill. You want to give them a chance to actually make sure that bait is getting down their throat. So that circle hook then will come back up and go right in the corner of the mouth. So give them a chance to eat it. Out of gear, clicker on, give a good count to 10, throw the reel in gear, and then just start winding. Let that hook, that circle hook, do its job. Now, for the rod, I like a rod that's about 7.5 feet long. Though these are big fish, and you know, you want to bring the fight closer to your body, you want that pressure closer to your body. I have found that when I've gone with a shorter rod, like the 6-footer, what happens is, because these fish they can be way out there fighting way away from you, and all of a sudden want to turn your boat. With the shorter rod, it actually brings the leverage point so close to your body that the kayak then starts sliding sideways, and you're getting dragged in a kind of an awkward position. If that rod is 7.5 feet, I get that pressure point a little bit farther away from my body. I can pull against the fish, and then it makes the kayak turn towards the fish, because I always want to just be following the fish. One of the most important things is to have good line and a good leader. If you go with too light of a leader, I don't know if you've never touched the bill of a Marlin, these things are like very, very rough sandpaper. So if you've got too light of a leader, they're just going to wear through it. Now these things have giant eyeballs. So if you're fishing with wire or anything like that, they're generally going to see it. So I just like to go with 80 to 100, maybe even 130 pound Seaguar fluorocarbon leader. Because again, if this might be a long fight. 2 hours is pretty much what we go for. Most of our fights have always been 2.5 hours. So if your line's not strong enough, if it's not tough enough, if it can't handle the abrasion like the Seaguar fluorocarbon can, you may get worn off and lose that fish. And the last thing you want to do is lose a big fish like that after you've been fighting it for 5 hours. So make sure that you have the right line, the right reels, and the right rod. Good quality stuff. I mean, these things are gear breakers. And if you don't have good quality gear, like I said, it doesn't have to be giant heavy gear, but if you don't have quality gear, you may find yourself with a broken rod and a broken heart. So probably the most important thing I would say when you're fighting these billfish is be patient. Fight them over there. Fight them away from you. The last thing you want to do is to bring a hot fish, or a green fish as we say, to the kayak. Because when you have a fish with a 3-foot spear on the end of its face jumping right next to you, it can be very, very dangerous. I mean, these things, if you go on the internet, you'll see videos of billfish going right into the side of boats. Like I said early in the video, these fish are not to be taken lightly. So fight them out there. Now there's a fine line. I don't want to kill billfish personally. I never want to kill a billfish. So we want to catch and release. So there's a fine line. You know, you want to make sure that you fight them far away from you so it's safe for you, but you don't want to fight them for so long that you kill the fish. So be prepared, plan for the end game. You know, when you go out targeting billfish, you should have all your gear, all your landing gear in front of you, ready to go. You shouldn't have to be digging for your landing gear when the fish is right next to you. So the way I like to do it, the landing procedure, is a two-person job. Like I said, I just prefer that. I think it's a lot safer, and if you've been fighting a fish for 2 hours, your hands are all tired, and then having to also grab the fish can be very tough. So having a buddy with you who can help you out is very important. So you don't need a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of tools involved. I always carry a cutaway tool, which is a small hook knife that I keep on my PFD. So if I can't get the hook out of a fish, I can just cut the line away. I don't even have to bring the fish up at all. I've got my landing pliers so I can get that hook out. And again, I'm not afraid to leave the hook in if it's just in a position where I can't get it. My whole goal is to get that fish, get a photo of it, get it back in the water, and get it revived as quickly as possible. So having the tools in front of me, having the cutaway tool on my PFD, and that's great for cutting away the fish if you just want to leave it with a short amount of line on it and the hook still on it. And more importantly, if you happen to get tangled in line, it's a safety thing. So always have that cutaway tool handy. Also having a good pair of landing gloves. As I mentioned before, the bill on a billfish is very, very abrasive. And if you grab that thing and it starts shaking like they like to do, it'll really chew up your hand. And you want to be able to hold on to that and control the fish, because if it starts shaking and you let go, it could end up in your lap, and that's certainly not what you want to happen. So a good pair of landing gloves, ready to go, like I said. Now, what happens near the end of a fight with a billfish is they tend to start doing circles underneath you. So what you want, ideally, is for that fish. Now I like to land fish on my left-hand side. So I want that fish doing circles on the left-hand side of my boat, going out and then coming back up the side of my kayak. And the reason we like that is that when it comes out, it comes back up along the side of your boat. You can reach down on the bill and the fish is already going in this direction. So its own momentum helps you pull it over. So in this two-person aspect, what I do, if I have a guided client with me that has the fish, I will slide between him and the fish. His line going over my bow. That way I can grab the leader and slowly plane the fish up. If you just try to yank it up, that's going to be an alarm to the fish and he's going to start thrashing. So I can slowly leader that fish and bring it up, controlling it. The client then he puts his reel out of gear with a clicker on. In case something goes wrong, I can just let go of it and the fish is going to swim off. It doesn't come tight right next to the boat. It doesn't snap the line and it doesn't have that thing flailing around in our laps. So he's out of gear, clicker on. I'm planing the fish out. Then I just reach up, grab the bill of that fish, and pull them up. Now, it's very, very important when you're doing this that you not only control the bill, but you control the bottom jaw. Because everybody's afraid of that really long spear. Its bottom jaw is like this as well. It's very hard, it's very sharp. And you go pulling that thing up and you're not controlling that, you could end up with that lower jaw hitting you in the thigh. So I always grab one, then I grab the other, pull them over our lap, then my client will grab it, pull it over, we'll get that hero shot on our lap and get that fish back in the water as quickly as we can to revive the fish, because we want that fish to swim away healthy so we can fight him again. It's nice if you have a camera boat along with you like I often do, because they can help you revive that fish as well. That's some of the techniques that I like to use for targeting billfish out of my kayak. If you have any questions, make sure you throw them in the comments down below and I will answer them as soon as I can. Please give us a thumbs up on the video, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to Kayak Fishing Tales.